Let's talk about the product goal. The product goal does not really exist in isolation. It is wedged between the vision, the strategy, the long-term objective you want to achieve, and our sprint goals, which is pretty much the tactical, our present. In my opinion, the product goal connects the past, our history, into the future, our vision, what we want to achieve. And by doing this, it really helps us and provides us direction and some actionability, what we can do today, so that we will really kind of be moving towards our long-term objective, usually the vision. So what's the narrative behind my my story here, my example here? So I'm using my company Effective Agile here as an example, which I founded in 2011. So that's 12 years ago, over 12 years ago. By this time, I had about 15 years of professional experience, international experience, and half the time of that was working for consulting companies. For me personally, working as a consultant, it gave me the additional thrill, something which somehow suited me personally as well. Now, it was important work, often high pressure, cutting edge technologies, things along those lines. And there was travel as well, going to places I really enjoyed. But after having seen both sides, I also learned that the customer doesn't always come first for those companies. Usually the consulting firm always thinks about themselves first. Now, at some places I had to work 40 hours, or I had to bill 40 hours, regardless of what I was doing. So, all my admin work and other things, 40 hours, that's what you bill. Even if you work less somehow, you have to make it up to 40 hours. Bringing in more headcount. Oh, well, we need an additional person here. We need an additional person there. Well, that really gave you brownie points and made sure you got a nice bonus at the end of the year. I had even cases where clients were turned down because the problem they were facing was deemed too risky, so that failure was very likely. And we didn't want to go in there, do something and fail. So the consulting company didn't want to put the stain on their flawless track record. So my personal thinking was to change that. Always put the customer first. Always. So how could I make this happen? And my thinking was, being a Just Me company. I had a really strong experience, also good technical background. And I believed if I can go in and help companies, I can just be honest, transparent, and really tell how things are. Also, I wouldn't have any overhead. Big companies often, they have like an HR department, a finance department, or this department. I have to payroll them every month. So, hey, it's just me. When I have work, I make money. If I don't have work, well, I can't pay myself. That was the situation. If I had to scale, this was another thought, is I would trust the network, because I've been a Scrum Product Trainer by then already. There was this PST network, great, brilliant people. Now, instead of just bringing in manpower, I could really pick and choose the best, depending on the situations I was needing more people. So scaling through leveraging my network, this was kind of another thought I had in mind. Well, if I will do a good job, it will provide, hopefully well. If not, well, the only one I had to blame would be myself. So there is no finger pointing. Well, I would have done it this way or that way. No, I could point to myself. So this is how the journey with Effective Agile started. But now let's go back to the product goal canvas, which I want to introduce here. And I didn't have the product goal canvas then, but I'm just using this as an example, how you can think about that. So what was the vision for my company? And the vision was the following. Here we go. Let me zoom in here quickly right now. Provide the best possible Scrum and Agile coaching, consulting, and training services. Be recognized as a leading expert in applying Scrum in complex environments. but also build a trusting and lasting relationship with my clients. For me, it shouldn't really be just about making money. Well, sure, yeah, it's a good side effect, but as Peter Drucker said, it's all about customer happiness, and that's really what I wanted to build. And I mean, before that, I was making good income, provide at least the same standard of living to my wife and my two daughters. So if they couldn't, I don't know, do things anymore they could do in the past because there was no money, wouldn't work so well with my wife, I guess. So that was the long-term vision, or this is the vision I'm still pretty much following. And then let's look at the product goal. So the product goal on this canvas here is essentially just a really simple statement. The way I think about it is like 4, 5, 6 months out there. So I founded my company in March 2011. So after 6 months would be kind of the end of the year pretty much. So by the end of 2011, months after I have launched my organization, Effective Agile will be present on the internet and have provided first services. So why was this important for me? Because somehow you have to go out there. People need to find you. If they Google for Agile training, coaching, consulting, things like that, I wanted to pop up. But also not just having a presence, which people look at, also that I provide some services as well. So the way you can think here about the product goal is really to keep it a simple, maybe a one-sentence statement. Now, much more important is the description behind it, because the description provides the narrative while this is important. Now, again, going back 12 years, so things were slightly different than they are these days. So Scrum and Agile is a really strongly growing market. It has really passed the stage of innovators and early adopters. Now, it's really, for me, my thinking was it's time to help the early majority, because at this point you can really see many companies want to, but they don't really sure yet, and so on. So kind of really help those people. And I have had those 10 years of international experience using Agile. And actually, I was also the first PST for Scrum.org in Europe. And I think this together should help me to sell my public trainings, extend and leverage my professional network by this time, and also building this trusting relationship with the customers, which I had mentioned before. So essentially, now reflecting back to me, Ralph, Jocham, and Effective Agile shall be known for their deep understanding of Agile and their professional integrity and honesty. So kind of this is what I wanted to kind of really implement, make sure I have this in place for my first product goal for founding my company. Now, how can you bring in evidence that what you have done is actually working? I mean, what I often see in organizations is that many decisions are being made, but are those the right decisions? Often it's like, it felt kind of right, or let's just keep on doing that. It's very much circumstantial, but how can we bring in direct evidence? That's for really an important thing I want to make sure and clearly on the product goal canvas here as well. So what I would like to have after those 6 months by the end of 2011 is engage with companies to really understand what Agile means. Because often there's still this understanding, well, we install Jira and we stand up once a day, we are Agile. No, it's just a tool and a practice. Agile goes much, much, much deeper. So engage with companies to really help them understand what Agile is all about, what it means. Provide trainings for enterprises, company-based trainings, maybe also combined with coaching, consulting, but also help individuals to pick it up, because there's often thought leaders or even organizations say, I want to learn about that, and help them as well, and be recognized as an Agile expert. Now down, we have this 2x2 where we have focus on what has a market end user focus, more like see it on the customer side. This is where the outcome you can think about would happen. And then the internal capabilities. What do we have to build up internally to make sure this can happen, essentially like a foundation basis to build on. And then the difference between leading and lagging. So leading is the things you do to help you to get to a specific outcome. And the outcome, basically, those measurements, they would be lagging. There's a time difference essentially about it. So if I would train for a race, leading could be I need to get new running equipment, I need to sign up for a personal trainer and things like that. Now my outcome lagging, which I want to achieve, might be a specific time over a specific distance. And let's look at these ones I've come up here with. Is again, it's like, think about, there was no company, nothing. It was just like this idea yet. So basically prepare a why me pitch. So why should you maybe go for training with Ralph Jocham? Why should you maybe choose the company Effective Agile? Contact my network, all the people I know who could benefit. So maybe companies I had been before as a consultant, other friends, just say, hey, what are you doing? Could you benefit from that? By this time, I had also moved to Switzerland. And there's public training vendors. So basically organizations, they have buildings and infrastructure and everything. And I just said, I'll contact all of them and ask them if they would be interested in having me providing trainings about Scrum.org trainings, about what it means to be a Scrum Master, Product Owner, and so on. But also find locations. I was also thinking about running my own trainings, organizing them, kind of do all of the things you need to do about it. So basically find locations so that I can run those trainings there as well, maybe a hotel or some other places. And also, being recognized, so prepare some talks I could basically pass into conferences so that I get a chance to speak there. And lagging, so this was all the leading. Lagging, I thought about, hey, having 2 paying customers would be nice. Having delivered 2 trainings by the end of the year, public trainings, which are self-organized. Contract with 1 training vendor, so one of the organizations running trainings, which actually worked out, and I still have a good relationship with them. And talk to 5 conferences, because every conference you put in a talk, you don't usually necessarily get accepted always. So this was more like on the market end user perspective. So internally, like capabilities I need to build up. So here I thought about, I have to have presence. So I need to find a web and email hosting company. I wanted to have my Effective Agile URL and for email addresses as well. These days it's less important, I'm seeing, but then I thought about, I want to have that. Corporate design. So the corporate design, which you see, is basically what I came up with then. But also establish internal back offices processes about how can we handle invoices and other things like in the back end that, everything is in due order, properly organized. Well, I also needed to find an accountant to make sure that all the filings I do and all the taxes and other things you need to do, that they are also in good order as well. I also thought about it's probably helpful if I establish a good relationship with Ken Schwaber, maybe try to help him out here and there. And so I give him support and other things like work he doesn't want to do. But on the other hand, hopefully I was hoping that I'll get some benefit from it as well, which actually happened. Now, to stay on top of the game, I decided to read about 1 or 2 books a month about related to Agile, maybe Agile books or some other things about organizational design and other topics which could be helpful and interesting. And in that context, because you need to go out, you need to present, you need to talk, improve my writing skills as well. So this is what I thought I need to do. And the anticipated outcome was the following here. So essentially, my website is up and running, probably earlier than the 6 months. I have a letterhead, another corporate identity, like you need stamps and things like that. Set up Google SEO so that if people look for certain keywords, they hopefully will find my trainings and services I'm rendering. Have business cards. Again, this is one of the things which probably is not that important anymore these days, but then having business cards. And I wanted to also provide at least 1 block per month. So that's kind of my thinking about how would I know that if I can check these things off, I believe that I have done a good job, so I'm on the right track, and then I can also keep on seeing the trend over time. Is it improving? Is it going down? Risks, which I thought would be maybe or still are around. I mean, they're probably always around. So the one is not being recognized. Now, if you're out there but nobody knows about it, well, you could be as good as you could be, but if nobody knows that there's someone, it's not helpful. Other trainers might have a better reputation being out there. Now, you really see this these days on the internet. It's like, marketing is really, really important. How do you present yourself with all the social medias we have these days in place? And the other thing is what I was really worried about is running into problems with the tax authorities. Yeah, kind of in Switzerland, things are, I would say, lenient, but on the other hand, you can talk to them, but if things are wrong, you still get run into problems, fines, and things like that. It's just making sure that everything is correct, not that anything could turn out badly in that regard. Then also every product goal has a clear correlation with specific stakeholders. And there's this really simple stakeholder map where we break it down into who are your users of the product, who can influence that, who can have an impact on the direction of the product, powerful people. Provider, what are people or companies you're depending on? If they wouldn't deliver, you would have a problem, you would be blocked. And then governance. And I like to break down governance into internal governance and external governance. So basically, internally within the organization, who would look at your reports, who provides the funding, and other things could be a PMO, for example. And then also external. So which regulations do we have to follow? Now these days, you would think about GDPR, and so on. So kind of what are the things you really have to make sure you're following them. And so in that regard, I decided that my users would be professionals, maybe people similar to myself, organizations, and specifically within organizations, people in charge about education training. So it could be maybe HR teams or maybe team leads would just say, hey, I think my team could learn from benefit from having a training in that field. Then influencers. So, I just thought, impact on the direction of the product. If Ken decides to do something, it might have a big impact. I mean, he was the person behind scrum.org, for which I basically was and then licensed to teach classes. But also in the idea about having a good relationship with him as well. And other trainers, if they really go out there and they do a better job than what I'm doing in marketing in some other places, that could have a big impact. So I always wanted to make sure I have an eye on those here as well, and maybe also stay in good standing with them. Then provider. Let's do this. So basically all the things I am depending on. Well, in this regard, I would depend on scrum.org. I would depend on the training vendor I'm working with. If they pull the plug, that would have a big impact. Well, some other things in that regard as well. And also kind of like from an infrastructure point of view, the web and the email company, if suddenly my email wouldn't work anymore, the website would be down, could have a big impact. Then governance, well, here we go. So internal governance, I decided to a big degree that would be my wife, telling me, hey, things are going well, kind of financially. She also runs my back office to a high degree now, so that she knows that what's going on, kind of like is everything in there, and then she prepares all the paperwork in regards to my accountant, which is also making sure I have everything in good standing, everything is correct. So twice a year when you file your papers and pay taxes and other things. And then basically in that regard, then it was the tax authorities I make sure, and some maybe other government bodies, to make sure that I'm in good standing with that. You don't want to pay a fine and then interest on the fine and stuff like this here as well. So this is where kind of the stakeholders I had identified. I need to make sure, I have a good relationship. I have an eye on them. I work with them and I monitor, make sure nothing badly happens there as well. Well, and then the Scrum team. Often, if you look into the Scrum guide, there's a strong recommendation about the size of the team, not more than 10 overall. But now in my case, who would be the product owner? Well, in this case, it's my company. I would be the product owner. So the product owner would be me. Probably also be, or she would probably try to influence me to some degree, my wife. Then who would be the developers? Well, that would be myself, I guess. And who would be the Scrum Master in this field? I think you can get a good idea where this is going. Would be me, myself, and I. Now, does this pose a problem? To some degree, I think there's an underlying risk there as well if everything is kind of on one person, because essentially, in my opinion, in Scrum, you have checks and balances by separation of power. Certain aspects are with the product owner, certain aspects are with the Scrum Master, and other aspects are with the developers. And this is how we get the checks and balances in place. And as a classical project manager, you sit on all those elements and you can basically, like a dictator, make all the decisions you want to do. For me, it was important to be aware about that and always make sure that, at the end of the day, if I could look into a mirror and just, whatever I've done today was honest, transparent. I wasn't making anything up. I was not faking something, not really honest to myself, maybe my family as well, or to my customers. I could say I have done a good job. Now, in a real environment, you would really have your product owner name here, the developers you have, and your Scrum Master. And I think this is also important because we want to have dedicated teams working on something. We don't want to have people working on several things in parallel, because then we get the task switching overhead. We lose focus, one of the Scrum values. We wouldn't get to commitment, another Scrum value. All of those elements could derail really, really quickly. So having a dedicated Scrum team here as well. So let me just go ahead and quickly summarize here everything again quickly. So the vision is really the long-term goal you want to anticipate. This could be years out. You might not even be sure whether you can achieve it. It's just something, I believe so much in it. I'll give it my very best, or we as an organization give it our very best to get there. Now, since this can be a long way out, it's really important to have some stepping stones here in between. And again, for me, the product goal, and this is the product goal, is like 4 to 6 months out there. So it's something which has a longer time frame, but it's still worthwhile to achieve. It's something like this is a really valuable outcome we're looking for. So in regard to this vision, you would then go ahead and put in the product goal, kind of, in this case, on the product goal canvas, a simple sentence. And I like to start off by, so that the time becomes really, really clear. Now, the description, the narrative behind this is really, really important, because it really provides the context. What has happened in the past? What have our observations been like? And what do we believe? And why do we believe it's a good thing to do? So my intention is really, if you would put someone in front of the product goal canvas and they look at the vision, they look at the product goal statement and the description behind that, they should probably say, wow, I'm getting it. This is a good idea. I like that. So how would you know that you would have been successful? And that's basically where the next section comes into the picture, the valuable outcomes and measures. And again, this is broken down into more market focus and internal focus, leading and lagging. What can I do up front? And how would I know lagging that I was successful? There's always risks. Some things we can influence, other things we might just be exposed to. What are all those elements? And just put them on there as well, so that you always see them, you don't forget about them, so they wouldn't just disappear. Every product goal, again, what you're going to do has a clear focus on for whom are you doing that. Now, normally for software product, the users are really important, because we solve problems for our users. How can we help them in the context of the description of the narrative of the product goal? What's important for that? who are the influencers who can really have a big impact onto the product, the direction of the product. Are we depending on someone else delivering something to us? We want to minimize dependencies for sure, but there always will be dependencies. How can we make sure, that we track them correctly, that we have a good relationship with those? And then governance, certain numbers you have to make sure you provide every month, or you follow some laws and regulations. Otherwise, you're in the deep end really, really quickly. And again, who's going to work on that? The dedicated accountability is by product owner, developers, and the Scrum Masters. And I think if you can fill this out, and if you feel good about it, and if you can track all of those numbers, and by reaching the date you have set for the product goal, and you bring in the measurements and everything works out, great. Now then think about, and usually that happens while you reach kind of towards getting closer to the conclusion of an existing product goal. You can then think about what could be the next valuable product goal in that direction. It pretty much emerges on its own. So this has been the product goal canvas I've created, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as myself using it.